Well, the forecast for today said it was going to be pretty nasty. It was supposed to cloud up and heavy rain overnight and most of the day today, and the wind blow 20-30 miles an hour or so. But they changed it at the last minute. It did rain pretty good overnight, let off early this morning. But now we got showers out there. You go outside and look, and it'll be beautiful blue sky and sunshine, and then there's a lot of cumulus buildup as rain showers coming out. Anywhere from just a little sprinkle to a pretty good shower. Well, this is just supposed to last the day now and not the whole week like they first said. Well, it's still too bad to stick the planer outside and set the saw up to do what I wanted to do with it, but it's not too bad to work in here in the hangar. So I went and ordered a new belt for that last night. I found the belt size and stuff. The Delta belt for it is no longer available. There's a few places that have them in packs of 3 for the unisaw and for a Delta shaper, but I did find one that's a pretty close match to it, so I ordered that. It'll be here in a week or so, I suppose. I got it on Amazon, and they're not always too quick on shipping anymore. Well, anyway, I brought the old belt over here and put it on there. Now the belt looks like it's in good shape, but it's just stiffer than an old bristle brush. You can tell by rolling this around, it's making noise in there as it goes around. So anyway, it'll work for now. So I've got the new belt on, or the old belt on. I went and got a saw blade. This is one that I had in the radial arm saw. A nice cut-off blade here. And so the next thing to do here is to check the blade alignment. After putting this thing all together just blind, it would just be too much to ask to have this thing right out of the box to be lined up. And sure enough, it's not. It's pretty close though. So what I've got a tri-square here, combination square here, I mean, and I set it here on the back end with the edge of it right in the miter slot, and I picked a tooth, and I've just got this thing set so that that tooth just tickles it. I'll tighten that nut up. Then I'll move this down to the front end. And so I'll roll that over to that tooth, is in the same tooth as in the position. And when I go to check it, I've got about a 1/16 of an inch or 32nd of an inch. It's too much this way. It's too tight on the front. So it's cocked just a little bit this way. Well, the way to adjust that is to go underneath there and loosen these 4 bolts. Well, the one up here on this side will just loosen it just a little bit, but these other 3 will loosen those, and then we can just move this trunnion over just a little bit until we get that blade lined up. Until I get the blade lined up, you're just watching. I'll get a light and stick underneath there. Now actually, I didn't see that before, but these 2 in the back, there's a cutout back here on this trunnion, on this rear trunnion, that I can get access to those 2 with. A 13 millimeter. Let's see if I can make that work on those. I get those 2. Now I got to get this one up in the front. I can't see it, so it'll have to be feeling it. Alright, I got that one. So this one here is still tight. These 2 and this one are loose. So if I shift this way just a little bit, and let's see what I got here to do that with. Okay, so it's going to move. That might be too much. It's going to move the back this way, and it's good, but it's going to also move the front that way. Okay, so that's just tickling it there. It doesn't touch it there, so now I got to move it back just a touch. Just a touch. There's too much there. Back just this way, just a little bit. Alright, now that is just a hair. It's probably close enough. Alright, I think that does it. Close enough. You can set the dial indicator up over here like this and test the run out of the Arbor. Two thousandths on one side is 0 and 5 thousandths on the other side is 0. Well, that's quite a bit. Now that doesn't tell me whether the run out is in the saw blade or in the Arbor itself. Well, anyway, that's pretty doggone close there. I'm going to tighten that up like that right there. Well, I just checked this and put this throat plate in there, and this blade is contacting the throat plate. Well, that's not good, so I want to move the whole trunnion over this way a little bit. So one of the things that happened here is I've got this splitter cleaned up, and that fits down in here. But when I raised the blade up, the bottom of the splitter contacted the bracket for the motor and pushed this splitter up, and it would interfere with this throat. So that means I need to move the whole thing over this way a little bit, just enough so we got clearance in there. Alright, now I've got clearance on there. Now we got clearance. Yep, pretty close. Pretty doggone close. So, let's see how it works with the insert in it. Oh yeah, I got clearance on there now. Got clearance on there now. Now I'll get the insert. Make sure it's flush with the tabletop. This one needs to come up. Alright, so now it's got to come up. The end is up. Alright, so now we'll check that the blade is square to the table vertically. There's stops here for the vertical and the 45, and so we'll adjust that. Well, that's perfect there. So that's I got to take that throw it out of there because that's blade is running into that on the 45. You have to make a new insert for that, for other than vertical. There's the stop, and it says 45. Alright, so that says pretty close. Pretty close. Which one of these is the notch in it? Alright, that's not going to do me any good. do it this way, and that's not going to do me any good either. Alright, I can do it this way. Alright, so that's not quite 45. Where's There we go, just like that. That's about it right there. Batteries are going bad on me, so I don't know where this thing's quitting at. I got the blade all lined up, and the splitter doesn't line up with the blade. So I got 2 bolts in there that hold a casting on for the splitter, and I think I can adjust it that way to line up with the blade. Put the blade back on there. That still doesn't move that over far enough to line up perfectly with that blade the way it is, so I either got to put a shim in the blade or elongate those holes out a little bit so that I can move that casting over just a little bit more. I don't know where I left off. Been working on this splitter. I took the bracket off for it, the cast bracket that fits in here on the trunnion. It wasn't lining up properly, and it had a hex head bolt on there, and it wouldn't slide. There's pretty good sized holes in here, and the hex head bolt wouldn't let it slide enough to adjust. So one of the bolts was a socket head screw, and that one would let it adjust a little bit more. So I decided I'd go ahead and get some more socket head screw. Well, of course they didn't have the right size in town, which I think is an inch, it's a 1/4 20. So I got, what is that, a 2-inch, 1/4 20, and I figured I'd cut it off. Well, the problem was that the threads don't go far enough on that. It leaves a shank on there, and that shank was too much, even with a washer on it, to coming through this casting here. So I took that up to the lathe and put it on the lathe, and I took a die, cut the threads down all the way towards the shank like that, and then I cut it off to the right length. Well, we'll get that put in there. Then this splitter, this one edge down here kept bumping up against the bracket for the motor, and it was knocking it up, and it was bending this bracket here that holds it on. I'd straightened that out before I put it on this last time when I was putting it together, but it bent again. I might have that thing upside down now. Anyway, it bent it again when that motor come up against it. So I straightened it out, and then I took this over the grinder and took off a little bit of this down here so that it won't contact that motor mount anymore. And then there's a pin here that's supposed to butt up against that steel bracket and keep this thing from coming out all the way out the top. And that pin was not protruding far enough out of there to stop that, to act as a stop. So I pushed that pin in there a little farther. We'll see how this works now. It's coming up against these bolts, these socket head screws. Doggone, that won't allow, if this thing slid over a little bit, that won't allow this slider to come down. Won't clear these fingers. So I'm going to have to modify these bolts a little bit. Maybe take a little bit off the top of them and turn them down a little bit. I don't know what else to do here. I took these socket head screws up and put them on the lathe, and I took a little bit off of the shank ends of these, and then I took a little bit off the face of them, and still got enough in there. Hopefully I can get the socket or the wrench in there on those, but hopefully that'll take those down enough that I can get the fingers to slide back, or the pawls to slide back and forth on there. Well, that's still hitting that motor mount when that drops down. It won't let it drop down all the way. Well, let's see if that matches up with the blade now. And it still doesn't match up with the blade. If I got blade stabilizers and put on there, then it would line up. Then I could move it out, the blade out a little ways and get it to line up. I'm going to do that. I'll look and see what I can get for blade stabilizers to put on there, because I can't get this mount to go in any farther. That's where the blade needs to be, but that's a good 1/8 of an inch. Well, 3/32 anyway. I guess I could cut another slot in that, or make more of a slot in that motor mount, and grind a little bit more off of the bottom of this. I cut a slot in that motor mount right down here, and that allows this knife, the splitter, to go down in there below that motor mount so it doesn't get bumped up, so it goes down all the way. I noticed that this bracket here had been all bent out of shape a couple of times, and that's what was going on, is that this thing was down, this splitter was down, and that motor, or the saw blade, came up. It would contact this and it would push it out, and it bent this bracket several times. So anyway, now there's clearance down there for this splitter all the way. Oh, I might have to open that up just a little bit more. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to have to open it up just a little bit more. That's pretty darn close. If it's set straight up and down like that, it goes down. But that thing goes at a little bit of an angle, so I'm going to take the die grinder in there and open that slot up a little bit more. Okay, that's problem solved. There's the splitter right there. Drop down in there. And there down right here is the slot that I just cut in that motor mount for that thing to go through. So that's down, that's up all the way now. There we go. That solves that problem. Now all I got to do is get something to bring that blade out a little bit so I can line that splitter up with it and get it a little farther away from. I noticed that it was still hitting on this insert here on the back side. It was hitting pretty good on it, and then I loosened up the bolts and moved the trunnion over to this side, but once I got the blade aligned, then it was still hitting on this a little bit, and I could file this out. You can see where this has been chewed up in here. Blade must have been misaligned in here because it's chewed up on this side and then it's chewed up on this side. There, now you can see it. See, it's chewed in here and it's chewed in here, so that blade must have been cocked in there. I'll go see if I can find some material and make a spacer in there. That blade's got to come out 3/32 of an inch or something like that, and it wouldn't hurt if it came out 1/8 of an inch. Anyway, I'll go up to the basement and see what I can do with that. See what material I can find to make a spacer for that. I think I'll make it I've got some aluminum that size. I think that'd be the easiest thing to make it out of. Well, the forecast about the bad weather was wrong. We were supposed to have bad weather for several days here, and yesterday it just sprinkled and then rained, and we had mixed showers and stuff, but it cleared up overnight, and it was foggy this morning, and now it's just beautiful out. Now they've changed the forecast, so it's supposed to be nice for several days. So that'll give me a chance to get these boards edged. I better get this saw going. So I went up and made a shim to go in between this plate on the arbor and the blade on the one side. So that's a 2-inch piece of aluminum. I had a big long, foot-long chunk of it, so I cut off a piece here, and then I faced the face of it, drilled a 5/8 inch hole in it, and then I cut off a section of it, parted off a section of it, and I faced this section, this little slug here, and then I crazy glued them together. Well, I tried finishing it last night, but the glue just didn't have time to set up, and this shim came off as I was trying to finish it. So anyway, I went ahead and cleaned everything back up again, glued it back together, and let it sit overnight. And then today I went in this morning and went ahead and polished this off. So I've got it down about 1/8 of an inch thick, and then it's depressed on the center here, so only the outer rim will go on it. Well, that's the same size as what this washer is, this shim for the outside that the nut goes against. So anyway, now that's glued down. Now I got to get that apart, and let's see if I can find my torch to heat that up. See if I can get that to pop loose. I don't know how much heat that takes. That's the first time I've ever done this. There it came. There it went. Alright. Alright. I was beginning to think that wasn't going to work. Now I'll let that cool off and get some acetone and wash that glue off of there, cleaned up, and then we'd stick that on there. And, well, that spacer cooled off enough in the walk up to the basement to put that slug away and to get the acetone that I was able to clean it up. So here's what the spacer looks like. We'll put the flat side against this here, and that's already got a rim against it, so it's only going to push on the outside edge of that. We'll put that on there. There it is. That's just about perfect. It could have been just a little bit thicker, just a touch thicker, but it's just about perfect.